All right, so there are a few things that will kill. There are a few things that will kill workplace professionalism. One is a mistake that a lot of managers and supervisors make all the time, and that's the problem of trying to create your work team as a family. And so part of the problems that oftentimes managers and supervisors face when trying to direct teams is that the family metaphor, it has no place in the workplace. And so what typically happens is that people start acting as if they're in a family. And so in a family, I find it very interesting. I have an uncle who I don't want to claim, but I can't get rid of him because he's a part of my family. And so when we talk about this concept of professionalism, and we talk about how family, the family concept doesn't fit into that, we have to look at a couple of things. So first of all, how does one become a part of a family? And there are typically three ways in which people become a part of a family. One is that you are born into a family. So your parents get together, they make magic happen, and here you are as a part of that family. Or people sometimes can be adopted into families, right? And so your parents, they go out and they select you out of all of the people that they could have selected. They select an individual to be a part of this family, and they say that we love this person so much that we want to make them a part of our family. The third way that you become a part of a family is that you can be grafted into a family. And so sometimes that happens through the combination of two different families. Sometimes it happens when people select people to be a part of their network and they create a family bond with these folks. And so those are the three ways that families are typically formed. But when we talk about the workplace, we don't have those luxuries. What it means to be a part of a work team basically is that I have agreed that my employer will pay me and that I will do the work, and so we have a contractual relationship. Unlike a family, if someone doesn't live up to their end of the bargain, at work I can be fired, but you cannot fire someone from your family. And so that that inclination that people have is that understanding that if we are a family, then I have the liberty to pretty much act any way that I want, because there are no ramifications, or the ramifications for acting that way are certainly different in families than they are in the workplace. And so I think in terms of professionalism, we really have to be focused on what it means to be a work team versus what it means to be a family. And so that family concept really breeds this idea of familiarity. It breeds that idea that standards are lower, that I can be very relaxed. The way that I speak doesn't necessarily have to be professional because we are, in fact, relations. And I believe that family concept really does a number on workplace professionalism. The other thing that oftentimes kills workplace professionalism or can cause people difficulties is the fact that oftentimes people find themselves to be in a very relaxed state. And it is my belief that as people relax in their dress, they also relax in their attitude and they relax in their attendance. What I know is that when people take the time to dress up, when people take the time to put on a tie, when people take the time to do those things, that becomes a uniform that commands and demands a certain level of respect and accountability. Police officers, firefighters, even lifeguards wear uniforms because not only do people say, this is a person that I can turn to because I know what that uniform stands for, but it also reminds the people that are in uniform what their responsibility is to the public, what their responsibility is to public service, what their responsibility is to the customer. And so I believe that workplace uniforms are also important. One last thing that really is detrimental to workplace professionalism and workplace accountability is this concept of respect. And all too often, people have taken respect and not really understood why it's important to have. And so when we think about respect, and I want to offer you a new way to think about this concept of respect, because disrespect, the lack of respect, disrespect is a form of violence. And so when we curse in the workplace, when we make derogatory comments or side conversations that aren't focused on creating or stimulating goals and objectives of the organization, we're actually creating a hostile work environment. All right? And so here is why I say that disrespect is a form of violence. So when one has been physically violated, when someone has been physically hurt, what is the emotional residue that comes from that initial harm? One might say that there is anger, there may be fear, there may be resentment that people have when there's a physical act of violence. And so now I would like for you to think about a time when you've been disrespected, or a time that you've seen other people disrespected, and what do you think that the emotional state of those individuals might be? I would confer that folks may be feeling anger, they may be feeling hurt, they may be feeling resentment. And so if that is the case, it is very clear to me that disrespect is a form of violence. And along that continuum are things like sarcasm. Sarcasm is an act of violence. Cursing in the workplace is an act of violence because it causes one to feel the ruffle, the anger. And it's really interesting because depending on the context of the organization, oftentimes people think that it's okay just because the supervisor, the manager, maybe even the board of directors use that kind of language. But what they're actually doing is they're imposing a hostile work environment or creating one. And I would suggest that that is a slippery and slippery slope, because here's an example of why that is important to address. So, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it's happened to me. I'm talking on the phone with someone, and I can hear them smiling. Now, I can't see their face. I don't have any other ways to see or understand the fact that they're smiling. I can't see them when they're on the phone. But I always know that someone is smiling. And what I would like to suggest to you is that as much as you can tell when someone's smiling, you can also tell on the phone when someone's upset or they're angry or they may have been cursing. And so I'm not a prude. I know that people need to relieve stress, but I would offer to you that the workplace is probably not the place to be relieving that kind of stress. Professionalism is extremely important, particularly for those of us who have to stand and represent organizations, represent ourselves, and at no point is it ever appropriate for us to go and use those derogatory terms, slang terms, or street language, because we are always expected, particularly when we're in the front of the room, we're expected to be the utmost professional, even if other people aren't being professional. Because one of the things, and I love this, the story is the Starfish Story, right? And I don't know if you've heard this story. You can look it up online. There are a number of variations. But basically what happens is there's a person that is throwing starfish into the ocean. A person comes along and they see this happening and they're puzzled by it, so they go and they question the person that's throwing the starfish into the ocean. And the passerby asks the person throwing these starfish into the ocean, "Why are you doing this? What difference is it going to make?" And the person continues to throw the starfish into the ocean, into the sea, and they say, "Well, I've made a difference to this starfish," and so they throw that into the ocean. Now, oftentimes, the core of the message is missed. The core of the message is simply this: the person who was throwing the starfish into the ocean wasn't doing it to get recognition. They were doing it because it was the right thing to do. And in doing the right thing, because it was the right thing to do, they got recognition. People saw them and were inspired by them, although they were not trying to get recognition. I am not a fan of the shock jock radio folks. I'm not, and often on cable televisions, they try to jolt us with the unexpected. But I would like to share with you that the truth and the reality that we live in is shocking enough. And so as we think about what professionalism is, it's not about creating families, but it's about creating teams, and teams that are focused on the organization's goals and objectives. It's not about creating atmospheres of disrespect. It is about, in fact, creating atmospheres of respect. And authentic respect only happens when people are being disrespectful to you. And so in the face of disrespect, you have to be respectful. And the trick about that is that when you are being respectful in the face of disrespect, or in a culture that's being disrespectful, or a culture that is casual, one of the things that starts to happen is that people see you as a beacon of light. And it may feel uncomfortable at times, but it is important that people see you as a beacon of light and as the professional. And so that causes, people see you, and that causes a snowball effect where other people can be engaged in being professional. And I would like to leave you with this last thought, is that you may never be recognized, you may never get an award for your professionalism, but we all know what happens when we get caught in situations where we're not professional. And so I would offer to you that the rewards, or the unrewards, or the lack of rewards are of being professional, being respectful in spite of what the culture says. The rewards are so much greater than falling to the temptation that oftentimes cultures try to subdue us with. They try to woo us with these concepts that you should be just like us. There are reasons why the shepherd has a different dwelling place than the sheep. Because the shepherd needs to have a perspective. They need to be able to see in different in larger ways than the sheep. And so those of us who have the responsibility of being in front of people, being leaders, being guiders through processes, have to take a higher vantage point than those who are receiving our services. Even if the culture says that it's okay, we have to understand our responsibility as good shepherds. My name is Koen, and that is today's principle.